What to do if my client fails a PARQ. Hi, I'm Hayley from Parallel Coaching, and in this video we're going to explore what is a PARQ and what you should be doing if a client fails a PARQ. So before we go any further, let's find out what a PARQ is. So it's a series of letters that is an acronym, and that acronym stands for Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. Now, like the name suggests, it's a questionnaire, so it's a screening tool that you do when you first start working with your client. And it's basically ascertaining how ready your client is for physical activity. And it's got an answer of basically, yes, they're ready, or no, they're not. There isn't any grey area in between. And it does this by outlining a series of questions. And these questions are things like, do you experience any pain in your chest whilst exercising? Have you been pregnant in the last 6 months? Do you have a bone or joint condition that could be made worse via exercise? And they basically write yes or no in the answer to these questions. Now, what's really important is to know that this PARQ should be done by every FITPRO for every client. It doesn't matter if you're a personal trainer, if you do classes, if you do one-to-one, face-to-face, online. It doesn't matter what you deliver or how you deliver it. The thing that is important is that the client needs to be screened to check they are safe and ready to start physical activity. So we need to pay attention to the answer that comes up for the PARQ. And that's a really important part of understanding as much as possible about the PARQ. Now, what's also really important about the PARQ is to value the PARQ. It's not just a questionnaire that you kind of waft underneath your client's noses and go, fill that out quickly so that we can get started. Because if it's not valued by you or the focus that you put into the PARQ, then your client's just going to randomly tick across and they're probably going to put a load of no's, knowing that that means that they can go and get started on the training. But what's really important is we get a very honest answer from our client so that we can act appropriately. So what's best to do is to actually sit down with your client, open up the questions and find out more about it. For example, your client might have some niggles that they considered a little bit of pain in their knees. So they're like, no, don't have any conditions that may be made worse by our exercise. But just by opening up with some good open questions, you end up finding out that your client actually has been told by their doctor or been diagnosed with osteoarthritis affecting their knees and their hips. And you're like, well, actually, that's a condition. That means that they need to tick yes in that box as they're not able to go forward and be ready for exercise. There's things that start to limit them and the risk starts to rise. But as a result, we need to have that information and we need to value it when we're working with our clients and we're on that screening process. So it's really important to develop those questions. Now, here's the question. What do we do if our client fails a PARQ? Now, a PARQ is classed as a failure if there is one or more boxes that are ticked yes. Now, that means that if they're no all the way down, that's a green light, go and get started. You're able to start training that client. However, if it is a yes, or therefore a referral or a failure of a PARQ, you need to seek medical clearance. And this basically means that you need more information about the medical status of your client, aka they have been diagnosed with osteoarthritis, or they have obesity, or they have a condition that could be made worse via exercise. So they need to have information, and you need to have information that justifies the fact that they are ready to start exercise. And that happens by sending a letter to the GP that is responsible for the client. And then from there you have feedback, written feedback, not verbal, that basically says they are good to exercise. So if a client basically has their medical clearance, can you work with them? That's the next question. Well, not necessarily, and it depends on the qualification that you have. If you have exercise referral qualification or the new version, which is the level 3 diploma in supporting clients with long-term conditions, if you have either of those, then yes, you can go ahead and start working with them. And the reason for that is that in those qualifications, you understand about the condition. You start learning about what can be done with that condition in terms of the lifestyle and nutrition advice, but also the exercise guidelines and the exercise prescription. With every condition that your client may have, and every kind of post-surgery or every kind of medication they might be on, these come with hazards and risks that we need to be able to manage and understand. And these are managed by things called contraindications. A contraindication basically means that an adaptation is needed to an exercise because they cannot do that based on the condition they have. And if they were to do it, it could make the condition worse or cause basically an escalation in symptoms. So for example, somebody that is hypertensive shouldn't do isometric work because it can raise the blood pressure even further, potentially causing a heart attack or a stroke on session. So that's the type of contraindications and contraindicative exercises that you'd be learning about so that you understand how to manage the condition. And that's why it's really important that the qualification is appropriate and that you are appropriately qualified to work with those clients. So let's just say that you've got medical clearance, they're able to work, but what if your client fails a PARQ and as a result doesn't want to go and get medical clearance? This is a question we hear quite a lot actually, and it might be because their relationship they have with a GP, or maybe they kind of deny the fact they have any conditions or need to be considered. Now it could be tempting to turn around and say, oh, it's all right, let's just work together anyway, and go ahead and ignore the PARQ. And maybe you've heard of other gym instructors or PTs that have done the same and carried on working with that client. But the risk is high. If you are not adequately qualified and the client has not been medically cleared via a GP and they refer a PARQ, then it's red flag territory. It's basically saying that there is something going on that means that they don't want to dive into it deeper, and this is an escalating risk. So I would basically turn those clients away and say that you're not able to work with them unless they seek out medical clearance, especially if you're then not qualified as well. So you need to factor in those 2 points. The other question we get asked is a PARQ a legal requirement? So it's not actually a legal requirement that you do a PARQ. You don't get fined or sent to jail if you don't do a PARQ with every client. But it's the highest standard that you would want to uphold as a PT, as a FITPRO, as an instructor or an exercise class instructor. And what's really important is that you uphold the highest standard you know of. It would be seen as being negligent to not do a PARQ because you're not getting all the information you need about your client to adequately screen the risks associated with exercise. And exercise is a stressor. It's an additional stressor that some people are just not ready to partake in, and you need more information. So that's why it's so important to do the PARQ. You may also find that from a legal point of view, your insurance is not valid unless you do a PARQ, and won't be valid unless you work within your scope of practice, which means only working with clients that you're qualified to work with. So essentially, yes, you need to do a PARQ with every client. And if your client refers that PARQ or fails the PARQ, you need to get medical clearance. If you're qualified in exercise referral or the level 3 supporting clients with long-term conditions course, then you're able to work with them. If there's no to anything else on those sort of stream of questions, then you know that it's best to refer them on to somebody else. Essentially, what this comes down to is being qualified appropriately and understanding all the conditions so that you can work with your clients safely. If you are looking to find out more about how you can become qualified to work with clients that fail a PARQ, all you need to do is click the link that is with this video. It will take you to the blog if you're not already on the blog, or scroll down and you will find a link that will explain all about our level 3 diploma in supporting clients with long-term conditions. The fascinating thing here is that it's not just a case of, oh, now I can work with them, I understand it. You learn about that referral process with the GPs and medical professionals. You learn about 27 plus conditions, everything from cancer, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, chronic fatigue, obesity, hypertension. There's so many different conditions that you learn about in detail that are more apparent than you probably realise in the population that we work with. So when you turn around and say, that you are looking to become qualified, it's not just about having that stamp to be able to say, yes, I can work with them, but it's about holding yourself at the highest standard you can so that you really understand those conditions and you can work with your clients safely to get the result that they desire so that you can have the highest level of reputation and standards as well. So that brings us to the end of today's video. If you haven't already clicked the link, make sure you go and follow that through. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you on the next video, but in the meantime, please drop a comment below and let me know what your big takeaway has been from today's video. Take care.